Hey everybody, it's David. Welcome to another episode of the Daily D. Today's topic is going to be the one thing you need to know if you ever want to be really rich. It's the one thing. And it's diverse. So watch this video. Please go down, subscribe, hit the notification button. I'll notify you with any upcoming live events. All right, so the one thing you must know, right? So when I was first getting into business back in 2006, 7, I had gotten into the bar business. Now, most of you don't know that, but I was in the bar business, which means I was making people happy. I used to tell people I'm in the business of making people happy because people love to drink, socialize, network, play pool. So that's what I did. And in my early years, I was very naive and I didn't really know what it was that I needed to do to be successful, but I knew that if I got into business, there was a chance I could do something great. Now, every business owner always, in the new phases of business, always aspires to get a loan. If you've ever been in business, that's the first thing you say, how do I get a loan so I could get money and I could go out and I could grow? Or how do I get a loan to start a business? Well, I was very naive like that too. And I went to the bank one day and I said, hey, I got a business. Look, this is my business information. Let's open an account. We opened an account. And the lady's like, oh, okay, here's your information. You know, would like to make a deposit. And I was like, yeah, I got $500. Here's $500. I made my first deposit. And then I said, hey, while I'm here, can I apply for a loan? And the lady says, yeah, let me help you, right? So she gets an application out. She's all excited. She fills it out. She submits, she gets all the information. And she says, okay, we're going to call you tomorrow. The bankers that handles financing is going to call you. I said, okay, cool. So banker calls me 2 days later. Of course, bankers take forever. Calls me, says, hey, David, do you mind coming in today? We could talk about your loan. I said, sure. So I go in there and I say, okay, man. And he goes, so what are you looking for a loan for? And I said, well, I want to grow. And he says, well, what do you mean? I said, well, I want to put some new stuff in the bar, and I want to add a keg cooler, and I want to market, and I want to do this. And he goes, well, David, hold on. He goes, you want to do all this? Okay. And he goes, it says here that you want $100,000. And I said, yeah, I want $100,000. And he goes, do you even know where it's all going to go? And I said, well, not really. I go, I mean, I can tell you I just said all those things, right? But I don't know exactly. And he goes, well, that's your first problem. And I said, okay, well, what, do you need me to figure it out, get a plan? He goes, yeah, you need to go get a plan and detail out where this money's going to go. I said, okay. He goes, but there's another problem. I said, what's the problem? He goes, do you know your credit score? I said, well, I mean, not really. And he goes, well, your credit's not so good, David. And I said, why not? And he goes, well, it says here that you have, student loans, and you got, you owe, this credit card and this credit card, and you have high utilization, and you missed a payment here. And I was like, oh, okay. And he told me my score, and it was pretty low. And I said, okay, so what can we do about this? And he goes, well, that's your biggest problem. I can't help you if you don't have a good credit score. I said, okay. And he goes, but wait, let me tell you one more thing. And I said, okay, what do you need? He goes, well, you haven't brought your tax returns. But this is your first business. So did you have a lot of income before you got into business? I said, actually, I was a college student and I didn't have very much income. I think I made like $7,000. And he says, well, that's number 3. You ain't got no money. I said, well, that's why I'm coming to you, man. I need $100,000. And he says, look, man, I'm going to be very honest with you. There's no way I'm going to lend you any money. And I said, oh, okay. I go, so like ever? And he goes, well, I'm going to give you some advice. And I said, okay, what's the advice? And he says, well, you got to get your credit score up. You got to get some income in your pocket. You got to know where you're going to spend the money. Go get a business plan, work on your credit, and make some money. And I said, okay, sure. So I left the bank and I said, maybe this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. So I went to another bank and did the same thing. I opened an account. I said, can I get a loan? The banker asked me for those things up front instead of giving me the opportunity to talk to him. I provided what I had. They just sent a letter in the mail that said declined. And then I realized something. The one thing I needed to understand was finance. I needed to understand my finances, and I needed to understand business finance. And it was a rude awakening because when you're a young business owner, you don't want to show a lot of money because you have to pay taxes, and you want to use all that money to go back into your business. I was very naive and I didn't really know enough about, I had a mentor at the time, and the mentor didn't teach me the right way. He taught me how to not pay taxes. He taught me how to, negotiate things to the lowest point. He taught me how to shortcut and cheap change people, or shortchange rather people. Now, I'm not saying he's a bad person. I'm just saying that's what I learned early on. Maybe he didn't teach me these things directly, but indirectly, by watching, by supervision, by visualization of these things. And man, oh man, did I learn some lessons back then. I wanted to be successful and I thought everybody needed to give me money so I could be successful, but I didn't need money. I needed to understand finance. So, for the next few years, I still didn't figure it out. I wasn't that smart, by the way. Day one didn't hit me. Usually it never does. If I told you something today, it usually doesn't hit you today. Even if it's the right thing to say, even if it's the right thing and you know it in your heart, you still won't do it. Why is that? Because it's just human nature not to change. So for about 4 or 5 more years, I really didn't figure it out. I didn't work on my credit, didn't work on my finances, didn't put together a plan. I just said, you know what, I'll work it out through making money. And I did. I hustled. I drove revenue sales. I marketed. I grew our business. I did really good. I opened another business. I did all these things with cash, if you will, because I didn't borrow money because I couldn't. And what it taught me, though, obviously, is how to market and promote and how to grow because I didn't have the financing to do growth. I had to do it myself. But what it also taught me is that if I wanted to ever really grow, I needed to figure these things out. So over the next few years, after probably around 4 or 5 years into business, I realized I needed to work on these things. So I started to pay down my debt. I negotiated some settlements with some people that I owed. I decided not to really build a business plan, but to really figure out where I was spending my money. I started using QuickBooks, which is an accounting software, which I never did before. I started managing my bank account a little bit better. I started to learn things about finance that I never would have thought before. I started to talk to bankers, and not to borrow money, but to figure out what they wanted. I learned what a personal financial statement was. I learned what net worth meant. I learned what credit score people needed me to have in order to qualify. I learned what income needed to be there. I learned how many years in business I needed to have. I learned what a tax return needed to look like in order for them to lend you money. I learned all these things not intentionally, but through pain and suffering because I wanted to grow, but I couldn't. And I had to figure it out. And in 2012, I got the biggest financing I ever got in my life. Now, that didn't mean anything because I could tell you another story about how that worked out for me. Because when you have a lot of money, that doesn't mean you're going to be successful. So the one thing you must know is that finance is very important. Now, many people probably told you this, but I'm being really serious when I tell you, you have to know your numbers. You have to know your credit. You have to know what it takes. And if you say, I don't really know how to learn that stuff, David, figure it out. Just go to the bank. Download, Experian and look at your credit score. Figure out what you can do to improve it. You see, you could do this for housing. You could do it for a business. You could do it for a car. So many people say, well, I can't get a house. I don't have money, David. I can't get a house. Right? And I would say, well, you're probably right. You can't. But do you know your credit score? Well, no. But do you know what kind of income you need to make? No. Do you know how much your debt needs to be or not be? No. You see, these are things that you could just ask. And some people are just so lazy or shy, timid, embarrassed, whatever that word is. You see, the people who ask the best questions are the people who get the answers. The people who ask the best questions are the smartest people in the room, not the people who have the answers. And when you understand finance, it changes the game, right? It changes the game. Today, I know what I should report. I know what I have to report. I know what my tax returns look like. I need to know what my credit score looks like. I know what my debt to income needs to look like. I know where I need to do things today because I had to learn. And it was forced upon me, but I learned those things not because somebody else. By the way, when you're an entrepreneur, nobody forces you to do anything. When you're your own boss, the only person that can do something like that, like right here, that guy right there is the only guy who can tell me what to do. And that guy right there, he can be a tough son of a bitch some days, or he can be a weak man. And that weak man says, who cares? Don't worry about it, David. You go, you'll make it. And the tough son of a bitch comes out and says, hey, bro, you better figure this out. People depend on you. And you know what? Maybe if I didn't have a business, I couldn't say people depend on me. But the future you depends on you. Right? The future you depends on you. That's the one thing I should tell myself every day. Your future kids depend on you. Their kids' kids depend on you. The next generation depends on you. Your family depends on you. So figure it out. Finance. Go figure it out, guys. Find out what your credit score needs to look like. If you want a house, if you want a business, if you want a loan. Find out what your tax returns need to look like. If you want a house, you want a car, you want a loan. Find out where you need to be in order for you to get the things that you want. And then work your ass off to get them. That's all I've done for the last 7 years. I've been in business 15 almost. Been in one business for 12. Been in several businesses for the last 5. Right? And starting new businesses today. Now, all of those things I had to learn when I couldn't get real estate financed, when I couldn't get a car financed. You know, my first real new car, right? I couldn't even get financed. I had to have somebody else finance it for me, right? That was years and years ago. Most people have to go through that. My first, anything really in life, I had to have help. Today, I don't need that. And it's not to brag to you. It's not to brag and impress you. It's to press upon you something, which is, if you know what you know, if you know finance, if you know numbers, man, you're smarter than anybody. You can outsmart the IRS. You can outsmart the bank. You can outsmart the credit bureau. You can outsmart the lenders. You can outsmart anybody. You know why? Because you know what they're looking for, so you don't even have to worry about what they're going to ask for because you already got it. You're way ahead. You're miles ahead of people. Go that extra mile. I appreciate you guys. I wish you nothing health, success, wealth, but most importantly, freedom. Thanks, guys.